Fairy Tail 100 Years Quest Chapter 185 is officially out, and I'll be honest, these recent chapters have been pretty damn fun. And this one is no exception, as it's giving some much needed love to the Erza Sace, as, if I'm being honest, they are characters that have kind of been in the back burner and haven't been given too much love in the series, despite Majima really liking their designs and the group itself. But throughout the entirety of Fairy Tail, they have kind of been dog-walked for the majority of the time after their initial arc and the anime canon arc Key to the Starry Heaven, when they become the major antagonists once again. So it's just nice to see the Sace get some spotlight and them actually getting some decent development. Not by a lot, but it's enough to show that they're growing, and also just gives some respect and time to these characters that have kind of never been that relevant in the story, even in the final arc outside of Cobra and kind of Sorano. So that's a lot. But before we continue on with the actual chapter, don't forget to like and subscribe and hit the notification bell for updates on future videos. Really helps, and it shows you guys enjoy the content I make here on the channel and shows you want to see more. Now, with all that said and done, let's jump right into chapter 185 of Fairy Tail 100 Years Quest. The title of the chapter being The Sace's Bond. Cover image, just as I was expecting from the last one, looks like we're getting a before and after dragonized versions of the Fire and Flame members, which I will say, Raj has a much better design as a dragon than a human. I did not care for his initial design. This new one being a punk rock looking dragon guy with a giant mohawk-esque hair, not really a mohawk, I kind of like it a lot better than his initial design, which you would kind of expect for a transformation of sorts. But the chapter begins with a brief glimpse of Fire and Flame versus Fairy Tail, with Lucy bringing out what I believe is Taurus's key, with a narration from Lucy this time, saying, "While we were fighting Igneous Squad Fire and Flame, elsewhere inside the revived Alderone, the Erza Sext were fighting the Erza Sace. Hadai collapsed and Cobra heard his voice," which, now that we're getting the actual narration from Lucy, this is definitely being told in past tense from this instance. So I'm curious to see how this is going to be, because that's how a lot of, well, narration goes in Fairy Tail. Lucy's the one narrating these events, so I'm curious to see. Sucks that we're cutting away from this fight between these two major groups for another fight between two major groups, but it's clear that Fire and Flames fights are going to be like the climax of this section of the arc. So we're going to cut back and seemingly resolve the Erza Sace portion of it. But back on Alderone, Cobra hears Richard's voice go out. But he then hears the thoughts of Blade saying, "Yes, and you're gonna die." Cobra manages to dodge as he realizes that he heard his thoughts, but Blade corrects him, saying that he didn't hear it, he read it. As Blade goes on to reintroduce himself as Blade, and he will be the one to pierce his heart. Blade launches a major attack, with Cobra managing to hear it coming and dodge. But Blade manages to read his mind, and he then manages to counter and slash Cobra on his chest with a massive blow. As Blade says, "That's two." As then cut back to Demon fighting Angel, as she keeps hitting Angel with a barrage of melting punches. With Sorano being knocked back, she says, "Demon was it? An angel won't lose to a demon." As she grows angel wings and launches an angelic feather attack straight at Demon. But she proudly pulls up her card and just melts all of the feathers. And she then casts another melting attack, saying Nightmare Melt, as she hits Sorano once more with a massive attack, pushing her down to the ground, saying that she's pathetic. "I came here to stop them, but if I don't do better, Yukino's gonna laugh at me." Obviously thinking of her little sister, she then pulls out a gate key and opens up the Gate of the Chisel, Calum, as she tries to launch an attack on Demon with this laser celestial spirit. I'm glad that she's mixing in celestial spirit magic with her angel magic. That's great. She knows two different types of magic, and it's really nice to see it. But right when it seems that she managed to get a sneak attack and catch Demon by surprise, blowing a hole through her torso, Demon seemingly regenerates, being back to normal. But she says, "I can melt too." So based on that, it seems like once she gets a hit in, or right as someone's about to hit her, she can just melt her body to the point where it could literally pass right through her and she can heal instantly, which is an incredibly broken power. As she then holds up her card and just launches another melting attack right on Sorano, seemingly defeating her as she screams in agony. We then cut back to Zero fighting Midnight, with Zero proudly proclaiming, Another one's down of my former children. With it looking like Midnight is still just struggling against Zero. He managed to deal a pretty good sucker punch previously by catching Zero off guard, but despite Zero having a little bit of damage, Midnight does still have it worse at this moment. But after catching up with Midnight, we cut to Meldy as she is knocked down on the ground by Gate. Gate is very smug, saying, "Irration 6, was it? Well, you seem particularly weak." But Meldy says her weakness is how she fights, as she then uses the guilty sense to link Gate and her senses, meaning that now any damage she gets inflicted onto her will be dealt right back at Gate. Gate calls it impressive, but he manages to break the sensory link, and with a devilish look on his face, he says, "Now how about I open the gate?" And in a terrifying image, we see him just create and manifest this demonic looking gate, skeletons, demonic hands sprouting out from all around it, as it then grabs onto Meldy and starts pulling her inside as she screams, with Zero saying, "Another one," as that brings the count to Sace being knocked down to 4, leaving only 2 left. And as Midnight is beginning to just wallow in despair from his team and friends being taken out one by one, we then get an inspirational speech from Sawyer of all people, as he's telling them not to give up, saying that if any of you guys die before me, you're gonna be sorry. Go on and win your fights before me. As he actually manages to catch Bird off guard and manages to land a solid blow on his chin, knocking him back, which last we saw, he wasn't able to land a single hit once he just started using Black Sky magic. So that is an insane feat by Sawyer to actually be able to land a hit. I'm really glad for that. And you wanna know who hears him the most? Cobra, as he then manages to will himself back up, saying, "I ain't going out like this," with Blade telling him that no matter what he does to struggle, he can't deflect his blade. But Cobra, with a massively big grin on his face, looking incredibly unhinged, says, "Deflect it? Quit joking around. Go on and hit me if you got the guts to stick it in this poison," as he spews an entire shroud of poison from his arms with his poison Dragon Slayer magic, which even he notices that Blade is hesitating right now, saying that he can hear his hesitation, and that ends the chapter. Okay, so that was really quick, but I am very satisfied with this chapter. Yeah, we got 3 more members of the Sace getting knocked down. Meldy seems to have been taken into some weird gate, but she'll probably be able to make it out somehow. Sorano was knocked down by a massive blow, but even though Cobra got knocked down, he willed himself back up. Midnight is probably going to get a second wind, and Sawyer is actually starting to hold his own against Bird right now, which out of all the people to say never to give up, it being Sawyer actually makes a lot of sense, considering that a big part of his character previously was him kind of running away from his problems for his own survival, just wanting to run. That was his biggest prayer, his wish back at the Tower of Heaven, and that's kind of how he's lived his life for the most part, even with the Sace. But with him being the one to give this speech to inspire the rest of them, and Cobra getting back up, was honestly really damn cool. And I really do hope that with Cobra getting back up, even if he just gets knocked out afterwards, I really hope he wins this fight, because if any of the Sace really deserve to win this fight, it's Cobra after the massive disrespect he has gotten against Acnologia. But I really am hoping that the Sace now manage to pull off a win, or at least take out half of these demons, because this group, despite Mashima actually liking their designs and liking the group in general, bringing them back multiple times throughout the series, after they got busted out of prison in Tartarus, they didn't really do much at all during Alvarez, and even then, they were kind of off-screened by one of the strongest characters in the verse, so it wasn't really much of a contest. So now having them each have one-on-one fights a year after that, them most likely being stronger than they were previously, and having to just surpass their limits and just manage to come out from behind on a massive fight against literal demons that are just dog walking them right now is great, because we have seen, not just in Key to the Starry Heavens, but we saw in Tartarus and even Alvarez, that these characters have a really strong bond now. They care about each other, and they're like a small group of a small family. So it would be really great if they actually managed to will themselves back up, showing their bond to actually take out these overwhelming odds, and that would finally put some respect on their names because I want these characters to actually win a fight and have their big moments, because it just feels like they've been done dirty throughout the entirety of Fairy Tail after their first major arc, and kind of Key to the Starry Heaven, that was their arc, and I think it still was a good arc, but that's just my opinion, and I really do hope things turn out well, or at least a bit more interesting for this section of the story, because Cobra might hopefully win this fight, or at least get a draw at the bare minimum. But let me know what you guys think in the comment section down below about these fights, the abilities of the demons. Do you think the Sace will be able to turn things around? How do you feel about Sawyer inspiring the Sace to get back up and keep fighting? And what do you think is going to happen with Cobra going forward with this next fight? Let me know. And once more, if you haven't already, like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for updates on future videos. Really helps, and it shows you guys enjoy the content I make here on the channel and shows you want to see more. With all that said and done, hope you all have an awesome day.